I was organizing the boxes of birthday presents I'd carefully wrapped for my grandchildren when my phone rang. The screen lit up with my son Michael's name, and I felt that familiar flutter of excitement. It had been 3 months since I'd last seen Lily and James, and I was counting the days until their visit this weekend. "Hello, dear. I was just wrapping the kids' gifts," I answered, tucking the phone between my ear and shoulder as I placed a bow on Lily's package. "Mom, that's actually why I'm calling." Michael's voice was strained, formal in a way that immediately sent a chill through me. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Rebecca and I have been talking, and we think it's best if we cancel this weekend's visit." I set down the scissors, my hand suddenly unsteady. "Is everything all right? Are the children sick?" A pause, too long to be comfortable. "No, they're fine. It's just... Rebecca feels you've been undermining our parenting decisions. The candy when we've said no sugar, the later bedtimes, the TV shows we don't approve of. I'm their grandmother," I said softly. "A little spoiling is part of the job description." "That's exactly the attitude we're concerned about, Mom." His voice hardened. "We've decided that until you can respect our boundaries, it would be better if we limit your time with Lily and James. Supervised visits only, at our house." The words hit me like physical blows. Supervised visits? As though I were some kind of threat to my own grandchildren? As my son continued talking about parental authority and consistent messaging, my eyes drifted to the college fund statements on my desk, accounts I'd been faithfully contributing to every month since each child was born. Nearly $180,000 for 2 children whose parents now deemed me unfit for unsupervised visits. That night, after the call ended and tears had dried on my cheeks, I made a decision that would change everything. With steady hands, I logged into my investment account and began the process of changing the beneficiaries on those college funds. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen windows as I prepared my usual breakfast. Toast with a thin spread of marmalade and a cup of Earl Grey tea. The house was quiet, as it had been every morning since Thomas passed away 5 years ago. Our modest 3-bedroom in Cedar Springs had once felt just right for us, but now its spaces seemed to expand, with emptiness, especially on days when the grandchildren were meant to visit. I glanced at the family photos lining the wall beside the dining table. Thomas and I on our wedding day, his arm wrapped protectively around my waist. Michael as a toddler, then a teenager, then a college graduate with his arm around a beaming Rebecca. And most recently, Lily and James, caught mid-laugh during last summer's backyard barbecue, ice cream dripping down their chins. Those grandchildren had become my anchor after Thomas died. The grief counselor had encouraged me to find new purpose, and I'd found it in their visits, in Lily's curious questions that reminded me so much of her grandfather, and in James's gentle laugh that was an echo of Thomas's own. Each visit brought a piece of my husband back to me in the most unexpected and healing ways. Our routine had developed naturally over the years. One weekend each month and every Wednesday afternoon, my quiet house would transform with the chaos and joy only children can bring. I'd converted Thomas's old office into a playroom, replacing his practical desk and filing cabinets with colorful storage bins overflowing with toys. The backyard, once Thomas's pride with its carefully manicured lawn, now featured a swing set, where the rose garden had been. "You've turned the place into a children's paradise," my friend Eleanor had remarked during one of our weekly coffee meetups. Thomas would hardly recognize it. "He'd approve," I'd replied confidently. "He always said a house isn't really a home until it has fingerprints on the windows." Between those precious visits, I filled my days with volunteer work at the local library, water aerobics classes at the community center, and coffee with my circle of friends, most of them widows like me, all of us learning to navigate lives we hadn't planned for. These activities provided structure and companionship, but they were satellites orbiting the sun of those days with Lily and James. After Thomas's passing, I'd made practical decisions about our modest savings. The life insurance payout, combined with the pension from his 30 years at the manufacturing plant and my own teacher's retirement, provided more than enough for my simple needs. Our house was paid off, my health was good, and my expenses were few. This financial security had allowed me to establish college funds for both grandchildren. Every month, without fail, I transferred $500 into each account. It wasn't an extravagant amount, but over time, with careful investment, the funds had grown substantially. I took pride in watching the balances increase, imagining the opportunities they would provide. Perhaps Lily would pursue art school as she often talked about, or James would follow his early fascination with animals into veterinary medicine. "You should keep some of that money for yourself," Eleanor had cautioned during our Friday coffee last month. "What if you need care someday?" "I've set aside plenty," I'd assured her, stirring another sugar into my coffee. "Besides, this is my legacy to them." Michael and Rebecca struggled for years with student loans. I don't want that for my grandchildren. Indeed, Michael had graduated with substantial debt that had followed him well into his 30s. Teaching high school science while Thomas worked as a mechanic hadn't left much for college savings when Michael was growing up. We'd helped when we could, but it was never enough to make a real difference. I'd vowed that Lily and James would have what their father hadn't: financial freedom to begin their adult lives. Now, the morning after Michael's call, I stood before the refrigerator where our family calendar hung. Wednesday afternoons and one weekend each month were highlighted in bright yellow. "Grandkids," written in my neat handwriting, surrounded by little hearts and stars. The upcoming weekend featured additional notes: Lily's ballet recital, bake, chocolate chip cookies for James, pack picnic for park if weather's nice. With a sigh that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside, I picked up a pen and drew a line through the upcoming weekend. My hand hesitated, then continued to the next highlighted day, and the next, systematically canceling a future I had counted on. When I finished, I stepped back and studied the calendar, now marked with stark black lines. It reflected exactly how I felt: crossed out, canceled, deemed unnecessary. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and turned toward my small home office where the college fund statement sat in a neat folder on my desk. The decision forming in my mind wasn't born of spite, but of a quiet, resolute sense of self-preservation. If my role in their lives was to be diminished, perhaps my financial contributions should be reconsidered as well. The adjustment to my new reality came slowly, in small, painful realizations that ambushed me throughout my days. Setting the breakfast table, I'd catch myself reaching for Lily's favorite strawberry jam before remembering she wouldn't be visiting. Walking past the playground on my daily route, I'd instinctively check my watch to calculate how much longer we could stay before dinner, only to remember there was no "we" anymore. A week after Michael's call, I found myself in the children's section of the bookstore, a new picture book about dinosaurs in my hand. James had recently become fascinated with paleontology, proudly pronouncing Pachycephalosaurus with careful precision. I'd already imagined his eyes lighting up when I showed him the detailed illustrations. "Is that for your grandchild?" the sales clerk asked warmly as I approached the counter. The question froze me in place. What was the proper answer? Yes? No? Not anymore? I placed the book back on a nearby display and left without purchasing it, my chest tight with an emotion I couldn't name. That evening, as I sorted through the mail, I found a letter from my investment company. The quarterly statement for the grandchildren's college funds showed continued growth. Both accounts combined now totaled $183,657.42. Nearly $200,000 set aside for children I was now only permitted to see under supervision, as though I were some threat to their well-being. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I spread the statements across my kitchen table, alongside the legal documents I'd established when opening the accounts. The terms were clear. I was the custodian, with full control until the beneficiaries reached college age. My son and daughter-in-law had no legal claim to these funds. This money represented years of careful saving, monthly contributions that sometimes meant postponing home repairs or forgoing small luxuries for myself. My finger traced the growth curve on the statement. If I continued the current contributions, by the time Lily turned 18, her fund would likely exceed $150,000. James's would reach similar levels when his time came, enough to attend practically any university without financial burden. A gift I had never been able to give their father. The thought of Michael brought a fresh wave of hurt. My son had always been headstrong, even as a child, but never cruel. When had he changed? Or had he always seen me this way, as someone whose love came with interference, whose help carried the price tag of unwanted opinions? The ringing phone interrupted my thoughts. My sister Catherine's name appeared on the screen. "Have you talked to Michael?" she asked immediately after I answered. "Not since last week." My voice sounded flat, even to my own ears. "He called me this morning, asked if I would talk some sense into you about respecting their parenting choices." She paused. "What happened, Marion?" I explained the situation, the canceled visits, the accusations of undermining their authority, the demand for supervised visits only. Saying it aloud made it sound both ridiculous and devastating. "That's extreme," Catherine said finally. "Have there been other issues between you and Rebecca?" The question gave me pause. Rebecca and I had always maintained a polite relationship, though never particularly warm. She came from a family with different values, more formal, more status-conscious, than our working-class household. Early in their marriage, I'd sensed her subtle disapproval of our modest home, our simple traditions. But I'd worked hard to bridge those differences, to respect her as Michael's choice and the mother of my grandchildren. "Nothing significant," I answered carefully. "Occasional disagreements about the children, but nothing that would explain this. Last month she seemed upset that I let Lily wear her princess dress to the grocery store, said it should be for dress-up only. And she's always been strict about sugar, but the children are so young." "What harm is a cookie with their grandmother?" Catherine sighed. "This seems like an overreaction on their part, but Marion, tread carefully. You don't want to lose access to the children entirely." "I've already lost what matters," I said, surprising myself with the bitterness in my voice. "What's the point of seeing them if I can't be myself with them? If every interaction is monitored like I'm some kind of threat?" After we hung up, I returned to the statements on the table. The college. Funds had been my way of ensuring the children's future, a concrete expression of my love and commitment to them. Now that expression felt hollow, a financial obligation without the emotional connection that had inspired it. What was the purpose of sacrificing for grandchildren I might barely know by the time they reached college age? Would they even understand? The gift came from me. Or would Michael and Rebecca present it as their own provision? I opened my laptop and navigated to the investment company's website. The process for changing beneficiaries was surprisingly straightforward. A few forms to download, signature lines to complete, a notary's stamp required. I could redirect these funds to any purpose I chose. They could become my travel fund for the trips Thomas and I had always postponed. They could support causes we had believed in. They could ensure I would never become a financial burden to anyone, regardless of what health challenges lay ahead. My finger hovered over the download button for the forms. Was I really considering this? Was I truly capable of redirecting funds I had dedicated to my grandchildren's future? The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Through the peephole, I saw Michael standing on my porch, his expression tense. My pulse quickened. Had Catherine called him? Did he somehow know what I was contemplating? I opened the door slowly, uncertain whether to feel hopeful or defensive. "Mom," he said formally, not moving to embrace me as he normally would, "we need to talk about your attitude toward our parenting decisions." My attitude, as though my love for my grandchildren was some teenage rebellion to be corrected. "Please come in," I said, stepping aside. As he passed, I noticed how much he resembled Thomas, the same broad shoulders, the same determined set to his jaw when troubled. The resemblance sent a pang through my heart. In the living room, he remained standing, declining my offer of tea or coffee. His eyes darted to the kitchen table where the college fund statements lay spread out, then back to me. Something in his expression shifted slightly, concern perhaps, or calculation. "Catherine called you," I guessed. "She's worried about you." He crossed his arms. "And frankly, so am I." This reaction to a simple request for respect. Simple request? The words escaped before I could temper them. "You've cut me off from my grandchildren. There's nothing simple about that." "We haven't cut you off. We've asked for supervised visits until you can demonstrate that you respect our rules for our children." His emphasis on "our" felt deliberate, a reminder of my secondary status in their lives. I took a deep breath, trying to find the calm, reasonable tone that had served me well through decades of parent-teacher conferences. "Michael, I have always respected you as a parent, but grandparents have a different role." "That's exactly the problem," he interrupted. "You think being a grandmother gives you the right to undermine us. The sugar when we've specifically said no sweets. The bedtime stories that turn into 3, 4 stories until they're overtired. The TV shows we don't approve of." Each example felt trivial, absurdly small compared to the punishment being enforced. A cookie, an extra story, an episode of a cartoon. These were the crimes warranting my separation from Lily and James. As Michael continued listing my transgressions, my eyes drifted again to the statements on the table. Suddenly, the decision that had seemed so difficult minutes ago came into sharp focus. If my role in their lives was to be reduced to that of a casual, supervised visitor, perhaps my financial commitment should reflect this new reality as well. After Michael left, the house fell into a silence that seemed to have physical weight. Our conversation had accomplished nothing except to deepen the divide between us. He had departed with the same rigid stance he'd arrived with. I was to have supervised visits only until I demonstrated proper respect for their parenting decisions. My attempts to find middle ground had been dismissed as negotiating when there's nothing to negotiate. I sank into Thomas's old armchair, the one I'd kept despite suggestions from well-meaning friends to update after his passing. The worn leather still held the slight impression of his form, a tangible memory I couldn't bring myself to discard. In moments of uncertainty, I often sat here, as though proximity to his favorite spot might provide clarity. "What would you do?" "Thomas," I whispered to the empty room. In our marriage, he had been the peacemaker, the one who could diffuse tension with a well-timed joke or find compromise where I saw only principle. But he had also been fiercely protective of his dignity. "Having a kind heart doesn't mean being a doormat," he'd often told me when I'd struggle with setting boundaries. My gaze drifted to the family photo on the side table, the 4 of us at ER. The lake last summer, Lily on Thomas's shoulders, James in my arms, all squinting into the sun with matching smiles. It had been taken just 3 months before Thomas's heart attack. The last family vacation we would ever take together. How quickly everything had changed. First Thomas's sudden departure from our lives, and now this new fracture that threatened to separate me from the 2 small people who had become my reason for going forward. I returned to the kitchen and gathered the financial statements, arranging them in a neat pile. The college funds had been established with such hope. My promise to Thomas that I would continue our legacy of love and support. Each monthly contribution had felt like an affirmation that life would continue, that our family would endure even without him. Now those same statements seemed to mock me. What good was financial support if emotional connection was severed? What meaning did college funds have if I might be a stranger to my grandchildren by the time they reached university? Age? My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. Coffee tomorrow? The usual time? Our Friday coffee group had been my social lifeline after Thomas passed. 5 women, all widowed, meeting weekly to share the unique challenges of navigating life alone after decades of partnership. I texted back a quick confirmation, already, anticipating the comfort of their understanding. The next morning dawned clear and bright, a beautiful spring day that contrasted sharply with my somber mood. At the coffee shop, I found Eleanor already at our regular table, her silver hair catching the sunlight from the window. "You look terrible," she said by way of greeting, pushing a latte toward me. "I ordered your usual." I managed a weak smile, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. "That obvious, is it?" "You've got that look, the one that says someone's trampled on your heart and you're trying to decide whether to forgive them or push them into a mud puddle." She leaned forward. "What happened?" The story spilled out in halting sentences. Michael's call, the canceled visits, the accusations of undermining their parenting, the demand for supervised visits, and finally, my contemplation of changing the college fund beneficiaries. Eleanor listened without interruption, her expression shifting from surprise to indignation on my behalf. When I finished, she sat back and crossed her arms. "So, Michael and his princess, wife have decided you're unfit to be alone with your own grandchildren because you gave them a cookie?" Her tone was incredulous. "That's absurd." "It's more complicated than that," I said, though part of me warmed to her immediate defense. "They feel I don't respect their rules." "Rules." Eleanor snorted. "When did parenting become so regimented? My grandkids have more schedules and restrictions than I had work deadlines. And the result? They're stressed little perfectionists by age 8. I sighed, stirring my untouched latte. "I don't want to lose them, Eleanor." "You won't. But you can't let them treat you like this either." Her voice softened. "What about the college funds? Are you really considering changing the beneficiaries?" The question hung between us. Was I? Could I redirect funds I'd set aside specifically for Lily and James? The mere thought felt like a betrayal of my own values, my promises to Thomas. Yet continuing to contribute substantial amounts monthly while being treated as untrustworthy felt equally wrong, a doormat, as Thomas would say. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me thinks it would be petty, using money as leverage, but another part feels... It just feels wrong to keep making these sacrifices when they've made it clear my role is to be diminished." Eleanor nodded slowly. "It's not about the money, is it? It's about recognition of your place in their lives." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Marian, what would you do with those funds if not for the children's education?" The question caught me off guard. I hadn't thought beyond the impulse to reclaim what was mine, to assert some control in a situation where I felt powerless. "I don't know," I repeated. "Secure my own future, perhaps. Travel a bit. Thomas and I always talked about seeing the Grand Canyon, but we kept putting it off." "Then maybe that's your answer." Eleanor reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're not being petty if you're redirecting the funds to meaningful purposes. You're simply acknowledging a changed relationship." After coffee, I drove to the local branch of my investment firm. The financial advisor, a young woman named Stephanie with kind eyes and a professional demeanor, listened attentively as I explained my situation in the most general terms. "I've been contributing to educational accounts for my grandchildren," I told her, "but circumstances have changed, and I'm considering redirecting those funds." "That's certainly your right as the account holder," she confirmed, pulling up my information on her computer. "The accounts are in your name with the children as beneficiaries. You have complete control until the designated transfer age." She outlined my options. I could change beneficiaries, redirect the funds to a different type of account, or simply stop contributions while leaving existing funds in place. Each choice came with different tax implications and future considerations. Take your time deciding, she advised, printing out information sheets for each option. These are significant funds. You'll want to be certain about any changes. I thanked her and left with a folder full of options, but no more clarity than when I'd arrived. The drive home took me past the elementary school where Lily attended first grade. The playground was full of children, their laughter carrying through my closed car windows. I slowed, scanning the groups of children automatically, though I knew Lily would be in class at this hour. A sharp pain lanced through my chest at the thought that I might miss her school performances, her science projects, her lost teeth and new shoes. And James, he was just beginning to form full sentences, to develop his own little personality distinct from his sister's. How much of their growth would I miss if this rift remained unhealed? Back home, I spread the financial advisor's documents across the kitchen table alongside my existing statements. The numbers blurred before my eyes as fatigue and emotion overtook me. This decision felt too large, too consequential to make while my heart was still raw with hurt. I pushed the papers aside and walked to the window overlooking the backyard. The swing set Thomas had assembled 3 years ago stood unused, the chains gathering pollen from the blooming trees above. In my mind's eye, I could see Lily pumping her legs, demanding to go higher, higher, while James watched from the safety of my lap, not yet brave enough to try the big kid swing. Would other children ever use that swing set? Would Lily and James ever return to play in this yard without supervision, without the weight of their parents' disapproval shadowing our time together? As these questions circled without answers, my gaze fell on Thomas's garden shed. He had kept it meticulously organized, tools hanging on labeled hooks, seed packets in alphabetical order, everything in its proper place. After his death, I had barely entered it, allowing garden tools to rust and plants to wither. Suddenly, I needed to be there, in that space that was purely his. I crossed the yard with purpose, pulled open the shed door, and stepped into the cool, dusty interior. The scent of soil and old wood enveloped me, along with something else, a faint trace of Thomas's aftershave that somehow lingered years later. In the dim light filtering through cobwebbed windows, I spotted his old workbench and atop it, a small wooden box I didn't recognize. Curious, I opened it to find a collection of smooth stones. Nothing valuable, just ordinary river rocks, each labeled with a date and name in Thomas's precise handwriting. Lily, first beach trip, May 2018. James, first steps, November 2019. Marion, 40th anniversary, June 2017. My hands trembled as I realized what I was holding. Thomas's private record of moments that mattered to him. Small, ordinary milestones preserved in the most humble way. Among them, I found a stone simply labeled College Funds Established, February 2016, with a small heart drawn beside the date. He had marked the creation of those accounts as a milestone worthy of remembrance, equal to first steps and anniversaries. The realization hit me with physical force. Changing those funds wouldn't just be reacting to Michael and Rebecca's unfair treatment, it would be altering something Thomas had considered significant, a part of his legacy. I closed the box carefully and returned to the house, my decision both clearer and more complicated than before. The next morning, I woke with a clarity that had eluded me for days. Thomas's box of stones had shifted something in me, not toward surrender, but toward a more deliberate response to the situation. I would not make decisions from hurt alone, no matter how justified that hurt might be. After breakfast, I called my attorney, Howard Geller, who had handled Thomas's estate and had been our family lawyer for over 20 years. His secretary put me through immediately. "Marion, what a pleasant surprise. It's been, 6 months since we've spoken. How are you holding up?" "I'm managing, Howard. I said, settling into the worn cushions of my couch. But I need some legal advice about the grandchildren's college funds. Ah, those accounts. Smart planning on your part. What's on your mind? I explained the situation. With Michael and Rebecca, their new restrictions, my limited access to the children, and my uncertainty about continuing financial contributions under these circumstances. Howard listened without interruption, then sighed deeply. Family situations are always the most painful. Much harder than corporate law. At least businesses don't break your heart. I'm not looking to punish them, Howard. I need to protect myself too. Financially and emotionally. Of course, you do. Let me outline your options. His voice took on the methodical tone of the experienced attorney. As the account holder, you have complete control over those funds until the designated transfer age. You can change beneficiaries, convert the accounts to different investment vehicles, or simply halt contributions while leaving existing funds intact. What would you recommend? He paused. Legally speaking, you're entirely within your rights to make any of those changes. But before you do, I'd suggest a middle path. Perhaps write a formal letter to Michael and Rebecca, outlining your concerns and intentions. Make it clear that while you've set aside these significant sums for the children's education, continued contributions are contingent upon reasonable access to your grandchildren. That sounds like a threat, I said, discomfort rising in my chest. Not a threat, a boundary. There's a difference. You're not demanding anything you're not entitled to as their grandmother. You're simply making your position clear. I considered his words. A formal letter felt cold, businesslike, another step away from the warm family relationship I'd always tried to foster. But perhaps that was the point. The relationship had already changed. My approach needed to change as well. Would you draft? Something for me to review? I asked finally. I'd be happy to. And Marion, this isn't just about the money. This is about your dignity. Thomas would want you to stand up for yourself. After hanging up, I walked to the hallway closet where I kept old photo albums. The oldest one contained pictures from when Michael was born. Thomas holding him in the hospital, looking terrified and awestruck simultaneously. Michael's first bath, first Christmas, first steps. I traced the images with my fingertip, remembering how fiercely we'd loved him, how completely our lives had revolved around his well-being. When had that changed? When had my son begun seeing me as an adversary rather than an ally in raising his children? The painful truth was that perhaps he had always taken my support for granted. The emotional labor, the practical help, and now the financial contributions. Perhaps in his mind, these weren't gifts but obligations I fulfilled simply because I was his mother. The afternoon mail brought an envelope from Lily's school, addressed to Grandparents of Lily Hartwell. Inside was an invitation to Grandparents' Day, scheduled for the following Friday. Each child would give their grandparents a tour of the classroom, share special projects, and participate in planned activities. The event concluded with a luncheon in the school cafeteria. I stared at the colorful invitation, wondering if Michael and Rebecca were even aware it had been sent. Would they prevent me from attending? The thought of Lily waiting for a grandmother, who never arrived, made my heart ache. Without allowing myself to overthink, I picked up the phone and dialed Rebecca's number. After 3 rings, her voicemail answered. I took a deep breath. Rebecca, it's Marion. I've received an invitation to Grandparents' Day at Lily's school next Friday. I wanted to check if it's all right for me to attend, given our current situation. Please let me know. I wouldn't want to disappoint Lily. My voice sounded formal, careful, stripped of the warmth I would normally express. But that formality was a shield now, protecting what remained of my dignity. Howard's draft letter arrived. By email that evening, it was precisely worded, outlining my history of contributions to the college funds, my reasonable expectation of regular, unsupervised time with my grandchildren, and the connection between these two elements. While Mrs. Hartwell has established and maintained these educational funds out of love and commitment to her grandchildren's future. Continued contributions at the current level are predicated upon maintaining a meaningful relationship with Lily and James. The current restrictions imposed upon her access make such a relationship increasingly difficult to sustain. The language was measured, reasonable, yet reading it made my stomach clench. Was this really what our family had come to? Legal letters and formal boundaries? I remembered Michael as a child, climbing into my lap for comfort after falling from his bike. As a teenager, confiding his dreams of becoming a doctor. As a young man, nervous and seeking advice before proposing to Rebecca. How had that loving relationship deteriorated to this point? I saved the letter but didn't print it, not ready to take that irrevocable step. Instead, I returned to the kitchen table where I'd left the financial advisor's documents. One option she'd outlined now stood out. I could stop monthly contributions while leaving existing funds intact. This wasn't as dramatic as changing beneficiaries entirely, but it would preserve my financial resources while I navigated this new reality. The next morning, I called Stephanie and arranged the change. No more automatic transfers would occur, but the substantial sums already invested would remain designated for Lily and James's education. It felt like a compromise I could live with, honoring my past commitment to the children without extending myself further in the face of rejection. 3 days passed with no response from Rebecca about Grandparents' Day. I began to accept that I would miss the event, another milestone gone from my life with Lily. Then, Thursday evening, a text message arrived. Grandparents' Day starts at 10 a.m. Lily would be disappointed if you weren't there. Please follow classroom rules and school protocol. Rebecca. No greeting, no pleasantries, just the bare minimum of information delivered in the most impersonal way possible. Still, it was permission. I would see Lily tomorrow, in a public setting, certainly, but I would see her nonetheless. I spent that evening carefully selecting my outfit. A light blue dress Lily had once said made me look like a princess grandmother. Comfortable shoes for navigating school hallways, and the silver locket Thomas had given me on our 30th anniversary. Inside were tiny photos of Lily and James. The next morning, I arrived at the elementary school 20 minutes early, joining a stream of other grandparents, some couples, some singles like me, all wearing expressions that mixed excitement with the slight disorientation of being back in a school environment. We signed in at the front office, receiving visitor badges and directions to various classrooms. Lily's first-grade classroom was decorated with student artwork and educational posters. Children sat at small group tables, practically vibrating with excitement as grandparents filtered in. I scanned the room anxiously until I spotted her, pigtails slightly lopsided, wearing the purple dress she'd received for her birthday, peering expectantly at the door. When she saw me, her face lit up with a joy so pure it brought tears to my eyes. "Grandma!" she shouted, breaking away from her table and racing toward me, arms outstretched. I knelt to receive her embrace, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and the indefinable sweetness that was purely Lily. "I missed you so much," she whispered against my neck, her small arms tightening around me. "I missed you too, sweetheart," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "More than you can possibly know." In that moment, holding my granddaughter close, while other families milled around us, I knew with absolute certainty that no college fund, no financial consideration, no principle of dignity could possibly outweigh this connection. Whatever boundaries I needed to set with Michael and Rebecca, whatever legal protections I put in place for myself, the relationship with these children was worth fighting for, worth compromise, worth patience, worth even swallowing certain hurts. But it was also worth standing up for, worth demanding respect for, worth protecting with every resource at my disposal. The challenge would be finding the balance between these seemingly contradictory truths. Grandparents' Day at Lily's school opened a small window of opportunity. As we toured her classroom, hand in hand, Her animated descriptions of projects and classroom pets momentarily erased the tension of recent weeks. For those precious hours, I was simply Grandma, the person who marveled at her artwork, laughed at her jokes, and listened with complete attention to her stories. "This is where we do morning meeting," she explained, pointing to a colorful rug in the reading corner. "And this is my cubby where I keep my special things." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "I have the picture of us at the zoo in there, the one where the monkey made that funny face." My heart swelled at the thought of her keeping our memory close. "I have that picture on my refrigerator," I told her. "It makes me smile every morning when I'm having my breakfast." After the classroom tours, we gathered in the cafeteria for a special lunch. I found myself seated at a table with other grandparents, most of whom seemed to be regular fixtures in their grandchildren's lives. "We pick up Madeline every Tuesday and Thursday," said the woman beside me, her husband nodding along. "It gives her parents a break, and we get our special time. We have Connor for a sleepover every other weekend," offered another grandmother across the table. "Started when he was 3. He's 9 now and still looks forward to it." Each casual comment about their routine involvement pierced me like a small needle. These were the normal, expected relationships between grandparents and grandchildren. Regular, unsupervised, trusted. The very thing that had been taken from me. "What about you?" someone asked kindly. "Do you have a regular schedule with your granddaughter?" I hesitated, unsure how to answer without revealing too much or sounding bitter. "We're working on a new arrangement," I said finally. "Life gets complicated sometimes." Lily, seated beside me and seemingly oblivious to the adult conversation, suddenly piped up. "Grandma's coming to my ballet recital next week, and then she's going to take me for ice cream. Right, Grandma?" I froze, caught between honesty and the desire to protect her from disappointment. "I'd love to come to your recital, sweetheart. I'll have to check with your mom and dad, though." Her small face clouded momentarily before brightening again. "They'll say yes. I already told them. I want you there." With the absolute confidence of a 7-year-old, she returned to her lunch, the matter settled in her mind. When the event ended, I walked Lily back to her classroom, dreading the moment of separation. At the door, she turned and wrapped her arms around my waist. "When are you coming to our house again?" she asked, looking up at me with those eyes so like Thomas's. "James keeps asking. He learned a new song he wants to show you." I smoothed her hair, buying time to compose my answer. "Very soon, I hope. I miss you both terribly." "We miss you too. Daddy says you're being stubborn, but I told him you're just being a grandma out of the mouths of babes." I bit back a smile at her innocent summary of the situation. "That's exactly right. I'm just being a grandma who loves you very much." A voice called from inside the classroom. "Lily, time to collect your things for dismissal." She gave me one last squeeze. "Don't forget about my ballet recital. It's next Friday at 7 o'clock. I'm going to be a butterfly." With that, she was gone, disappearing into the classroom in a flash of purple dress and bobbing pigtails. I stood there a moment longer, reluctant to leave, until a teacher gently reminded me that all visitors needed to sign out at the front office. In the parking lot, a text message buzzed through. "Rebecca. Lily says you promised to attend her ballet recital. We didn't discuss this." The warm glow from the morning faded slightly. I typed back carefully. "I didn't promise. She invited me, and I said I would need to check with you and Michael first. May I attend?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "Fine, but no backstage before the show. It's chaotic enough without extra people, and no gifts." She gets overexcited. Not exactly a warm welcome, but it was permission. Another opportunity to see my granddaughter. "Thank you," I replied simply. "I appreciate it." Driving home, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The invitation to the recital, combined with the evident fact that both children had been asking for me, suggested that the separation wasn't as complete as Michael and Rebecca might have wished. Children had a way of maintaining connections important to them, regardless of adult complications. That evening, I called Howard to update him on the developments. "So, you've had some contact, and more is planned," he summarized. "That's good. Have you made any decisions about the letter or the college funds?" "I've stopped the monthly contributions," I told him. "The existing funds remain in place for the children. As for the letter, I'm holding off for now. Today felt like a small step forward. I don't want to jeopardize that." Understandable. But Marion, don't lose sight of the bigger picture. One school event and a ballet recital don't constitute the regular relationship you deserve with your grandchildren. They're throwing you crumbs. His bluntness stung, partly because I feared he was right. Perhaps. But for now, they're crumbs I'm willing to accept. Just be careful. Document everything. Every text, every interaction, every permission granted or denied. If things deteriorate again, that record will be important. After we hung up, I spent the evening planning for the ballet recital, selecting an appropriate outfit, ordering a small bouquet of flowers to be delivered to the auditorium, technically not a gift Lily would receive beforehand, and purchasing a card I would fill with words of encouragement and pride. The following week passed slowly, measured by anticipation of Friday's performance. I cleaned the house thoroughly, though no one would see it. I baked cookies, though no one would eat them. These familiar activities, once performed for family gatherings, now served only to fill empty hours. On Wednesday, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Hartwell? This is Eliza Jenkins, James's preschool teacher." My pulse quickened with immediate concern. "Is James all right?" "Oh, he's fine," she assured me quickly. "I'm calling because we're having our own Grandparents' Day next Tuesday, and James has been quite insistent that I call you personally to make sure you'll be there. He seems worried you won't know about it." Warmth spread through my chest at this evidence of my grandson's desire to include me. His sister had a similar event last week. I wasn't sure if James's school did the same. We do indeed. It's from 9 to 11 on Tuesday morning. Games, songs, snacks, the usual preschool festivities. James would be thrilled if you could attend. "I'll need to check with his parents first," I explained, the words becoming a familiar refrain in my new reality. "But please tell James I very much want to be there. I understand. Family dynamics can be complicated." Her tone suggested she knew more than she was saying. "I'll let James know you're planning to come pending parental approval." After thanking her, I immediately texted Michael. "James's teacher just called about Grandparents' Day next Tuesday at his preschool. He's apparently been asking for me specifically. May I attend?" The response came faster than I expected. "What time? What's even am? Okay." Just that. No greeting, no pleasantries, but permission granted. 2 events in 1 week. It felt like progress, however small. Friday evening arrived, and I found myself sitting in the elementary school auditorium, program in hand, scanning the names until I found Lily Hartwell, butterfly number 3. The seats around me filled with parents, siblings, grandparents, normal families sharing a normal milestone. A familiar ache returned, the sense of being adjacent to but not fully part of these experiences. The lights dimmed, music swelled, and tiny dancers began filing onto the stage in colorful costumes. When Lily appeared in iridescent blue-green wings, her face serious with concentration, tears pricked my eyes. She was beautiful, earnest, slightly offbeat, and perfectly 7 years old. From the corner of my eye, I spotted Michael and Rebecca several rows ahead, Rebecca filming with her phone while Michael watched intently. They hadn't seen me yet, and I was content to keep it that way. This evening wasn't about our conflict. It was about celebrating Lily. After the performance, Families gathered in the lobby where excited children, still in costume, received congratulations and flowers. I waited my turn, bouquet in hand, until Lily spotted me through the crowd. "Grandma, you came!" She rushed toward me, wings bobbing, face flushed with excitement. "Did you see me? Did you see my butterfly wings?" I knelt to her level, presenting the flowers with a small bow. "I saw everything. You were the most beautiful butterfly on that stage." As she buried her face in the bouquet, inhaling the fragrance with theatrical delight, I glanced up to see Michael and Rebecca watching from a distance. Rebecca's expression was unreadable, but Michael, for just a moment, offered a slight nod of acknowledgement. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't even a conversation. But it was something. A wordless recognition that despite everything, we were still connected through this child we all loved. The moment passed quickly. They turned away, drawn into conversation with other parents. But that brief connection, along with Lily's joy at my presence, sustained me through the drive home to my empty house. For the first time since this conflict began, I allowed myself to hope that perhaps, gradually, a new equilibrium might emerge, one that preserved my relationship with my grandchildren while acknowledging their parents' authority. It wouldn't be what we had before, but it might be enough. This cautious optimism carried me through the weekend and into the following week, as I prepared for James's preschool event with renewed energy. Maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind, as James's Grandparents' Day had the cheerful chaos typical of any preschool event. Finger paintings displayed with proud earnestness, slightly off-key songs performed with enthusiastic volume, and small children alternating between shy clinginess and exuberant showing off. James, at 4, fell decidedly into the latter category, pulling me by the hand from one activity station to the next. "Grandma, look, I made this." He thrust a lopsided clay sculpture toward me. "It's a dinosaur, a T-Rex. See his scary teeth?" I examined the unidentifiable lump with appropriate admiration. "Those are the scariest teeth I've ever seen. You're quite the artist, James." His chest puffed with pride. "Teacher says I'm most imaginative in class." For 2 blissful hours, I was immersed in his world, helping him string cereal necklaces, applauding his performance in the Wheels on the Bus chorus, and listening to elaborate stories about classroom events that may or may not have actually occurred. Not once did I think about college funds or legal letters or parental boundaries. There was only this moment, this connection, this small hand trustingly enclosed in mine. The illusion of normalcy shattered when Rebecca arrived to pick him up. Her appearance at the classroom door immediately changed the atmosphere. James's animated chatter ceased as he glanced between his mother and me, suddenly uncertain. "Hello, Rebecca," I said, keeping my voice light for James's benefit. "We've had a wonderful morning." She nodded stiffly. "James, it's time to go. Dad's waiting." "In the car?" Her gaze never quite met mine as she collected his backpack and jacket. James looked up at me, his small forehead creased with confusion. "Aren't you coming too, Grandma? To our house?" Before I could formulate a gentle response, Rebecca cut in. "Grandma has other plans today, sweetheart. Say thank you for coming to your special day." "But I want her to come home with us," he insisted, his lower lip beginning to tremble. "I want to show her my new train track." Rebecca's expression tightened. "Not today, James. Say goodbye now." The naked disappointment on his face as he reluctantly hugged me goodbye felt like a physical ache in my chest. "Bye, Grandma," he whispered. "I love you 100 million. "I love you 100,000,001, I whispered back, our traditional exchange. As Rebecca led him away, he looked back over his shoulder, confusion and disappointment evident in his posture. I maintained a smile until they turned the corner, then slowly gathered my purse and jacket, suddenly exhausted by the emotional whiplash of the morning. Outside in the parking lot, I wasn't entirely surprised to see Michael waiting by their car, James already secured in his car seat. What did surprise me was Michael approaching as I reached my own vehicle. "Mom," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Thanks for coming today. It meant a lot to James." I nodded, unsure how to respond to this unexpected acknowledgement. "Listen," he continued, glancing back toward his car where Rebecca sat in the passenger seat, deliberately not watching us. "We're having James's birthday party on Saturday. Small gathering, just family and a couple of his friends from preschool. 2 to 4 at our house." He paused. "You should come." It wasn't delivered with warmth, more like a reluctant concession, but it was an invitation nonetheless. "I'd like that very much," I said simply. "Good." He shifted uncomfortably. "Just follow the usual rules. No excess sugar, no undermining what we say. You know the drill." And just like that, the olive branch revealed its thorns. I swallowed my immediate response, reminded myself that progress would be incremental. "I understand." He nodded once, then returned to his car without another word. I watched them drive. Away, James's small hand waving frantically through the rear window until they turned out of sight. That evening, as I wrapped James's birthday gift, a set of wooden train tracks I'd ordered weeks ago before all this began, the doorbell rang. On my porch stood Catherine, my sister, holding a casserole dish and wearing a concerned expression. "Dinner," she announced, brushing past me into the house. "And conversation." Not necessarily in that order. In the kitchen, as she busied herself setting out plates and silverware, she wasted no time getting to the point. "I spoke with Michael yesterday." My stomach tightened. "Oh?" "He says there's been progress in your relationship, that you've been to some school events and are coming to James's party." She turned to face me, arms crossed. "He also mentioned you've stopped contributing to the college funds. So that's what this was about." "I have," I confirmed, sitting down at the table. "For now, at least. The existing money remains designated for their education." Catherine joined me, serving portions of her chicken casserole onto both plates. "He's upset about it. Says it feels like financial manipulation." I laughed without humor. "That's rich coming from him. What does he call restricting my access to the children unless I follow their arbitrary rules?" "Parenting," she replied bluntly. "Marion, I'm on your side here, but I'm worried you're making things worse. The college funds were your idea, your commitment to the kids, using them as leverage." "I'm not," I interrupted, setting down my fork with more force than intended. "I'm simply recognizing that circumstances have changed. I'm on a fixed income, Catherine. I can't continue making significant monthly contributions to educational funds for children I'm barely allowed to see." She studied me for a long moment. "Is that really it? Or are you trying to make a point?" The question hung between us, uncomfortably perceptive. Was I making a principled financial decision, or was I engaging in my own form of manipulation? The line felt increasingly blurry. "Maybe both," I admitted finally. "Is that so wrong? To stand up for myself after being sidelined in my own grandchildren's lives?" Catherine sighed, reaching across the table to cover my hand with hers. "No, it's not wrong. But Marion, these tactics, from both sides, are creating a scorecard. Michael withdraws access. You withdraw money. They allow limited contact. You consider reinstating contributions. Where does it end?" Her words resonated uncomfortably. When had my relationship with my son's family become this transactional? This cold calculation of giving and withholding? "I don't know," I said truthfully. "I just know I can't continue as things were. It was unsustainable." "I understand that. Just be careful the cure isn't worse than the disease." She squeezed my hand before returning to her meal. "Now, tell me about James's grandparents' day. Was he adorable?" Of course he was. Grateful for the shift in conversation, I shared stories. From the morning, Catherine's warm laughter easing some of the tension that had built during our discussion. Yet her words lingered in my mind long after she'd gone home. Saturday arrived with the crisp brightness of early spring. I spent extra time on my appearance before heading to James's party, selecting a cheerful blue sweater he had once declared his favorite grandma color, and arranging my silver hair with particular care. The wrapped train set on the passenger seat beside me seemed simultaneously too much and not enough. A gift selected with love, but now shadowed by the complex dynamics between the adults in James's life. I'd included a card with a simple message: "Happy 4th birthday to my wonderful grandson. Love you 100,000,001. Grandma." Michael and Rebecca's house was a modern 2-story in a planned community, with manicured lawns and uniform architectural features. Today, colorful balloons tied to the mailbox and a "Happy Birthday" sign on the front door disrupted its usual sterile perfection. Inside, the controlled chaos of a preschooler's party was in full swing. 4 small boys raced through the living room wielding foam swords, while James, wearing a plastic crown, directed their adventure from atop the sofa. Rebecca's parents, Harold and Diane, sat in opposite corners of the room, Harold deeply engaged with his phone while Diane chatted with another guest I didn't recognize. Rebecca emerged from the kitchen, a forced smile appearing when she spotted me. "Marion, you made it. You can put James's gift on the table with the others." She gestured toward a side table already laden with wrapped packages. "Thank you for including me," I said, trying to establish a friendly tone. "Can I help with anything?" "Everything's under control, but thanks." Her response was polite but dismissive as she moved past me to referee a dispute between 2 of the young guests. I placed my gift on the table and moved toward the kitchen, hoping to find Michael. Instead, I encountered Diane, Rebecca's mother, pouring herself a glass of wine. "Marion," she greeted me with the artificial warmth of someone who has previously discussed you unfavorably. "How lovely to see you. It's been ages." "Good to see. You too, Diane. How are you and Harold?" "Oh, busy as ever. Harold's taken on another corporate board position, and I'm chairing the hospital benefit again this year." She took a sip of wine, eyeing me over the rim of her glass. "Rebecca mentioned you've been having some disagreements about the children." So that was how they were framing it. "We're working through some differences in perspective," I replied carefully. Her non-committal hum spoke volumes. Parenting is so much more complex these days. When our children were young, we didn't have all these studies and methods to follow. Now, Rebecca and Michael are trying to raise conscientious, emotionally intelligent children in a very challenging world. It requires consistency from everyone involved. The message couldn't have been clearer. The problem was my failure to conform to their parenting approach, not their unreasonable restrictions. I was saved from responding by James's excited shout as he finally noticed my presence. "Grandma!" He barreled into my legs, nearly knocking me off balance. "You came to my party. Look at my crown. I'm the birthday king." Kneeling to his level, I adjusted the tilting crown on his head. "And a very handsome king you are. Are you having a wonderful birthday?" "The best ever," he declared. "Except..." He lowered his voice to a stage whisper. "I asked for chocolate cake, but Mom made carrot cake 'cause it's healthier." He wrinkled, his nose in disapproval. "Carrot cake can be delicious," I offered diplomatically, catching Rebecca's watchful gaze from across the room. "I guess." He shrugged, unconvinced. "Come see my presents. Dad already let me open one. It's a remote control." "Dinosaur!" Taking my hand, he pulled me toward the living room, chattering excitedly about his party activities and plans. For these few precious moments, everything else faded away. The tension with Rebecca, the cautious détente with Michael, the judgmental presence of Diane. There was only James's small hand in mine, his voice rapid with excitement. his unguarded joy at having me there. But as the afternoon progressed, the weight of scrutiny returned. I felt Rebecca's eyes on me whenever I interacted, with James or Lily, monitoring my every word and gesture for potential violations of their rules. When James asked for a second juice box and looked to me when Rebecca said no, I carefully redirected him without contradicting his mother, though the temptation to simply give him what he wanted was strong. By the time cake was served, indeed, carrot with cream cheese frosting artfully decorated with a dinosaur scene, the constant vigilance had left me exhausted. I sat quietly as James opened his gifts, applauding along with the other guests, my smile fixed in place. When James unwrapped my gift, his eyes widened with delight. Train tracks, the wooden kind. He immediately began tearing open the box, pulling out curved and straight sections. "Look, Mom, they connect to my other tracks." Rebecca stepped forward, examining the gift with undisguised scrutiny. "That's quite elaborate, Marion." Her tone carried a hint of disapproval. "We're trying to be mindful about how many toys James accumulates." "It's educational," I offered mildly. "Promotes spatial reasoning and creativity. Still, we should have discussed it first." She turned to James, who was already connecting pieces on the carpet. "Let's put this away for now, sweetheart. We'll finish opening presents, then have cake." James's face fell. "But I want to play with it now." "Later," Rebecca insisted, already gathering the track pieces back into the box. "We need to keep to our schedule." I bit my tongue, watching as James reluctantly released his grip on the tracks. The disappointment in his eyes cut through me, but I remained silent, remembering Michael's warning about undermining their decisions. After cake, which James ate with dutiful politeness rather than enthusiasm, the party began to wind down. Parents arrived to collect their children, thanking Rebecca for a lovely, well-organized afternoon. Harold and Diane departed with perfunctory hugs for their grandchildren and cool nods in my direction. As I prepared to leave, Michael approached, lowering his voice so the remaining guests couldn't hear. "Did you get my email about the financial statements?" I stiffened. "What email?" "I sent it yesterday, about the quarterly reports for the kids' college funds. They didn't arrive this month." "The statements go directly to me," I explained. "I'm the account holder." "I know, but you've always forwarded copies to us, for tax planning." His expression was carefully neutral, but I detected an undercurrent of accusation. "I'll check into it." I gathered my purse, suddenly eager to escape the tension. "Thank you for including me today. It meant a great deal to see James on his birthday." Michael nodded stiffly. "We're trying to make this work, Mom, but it has to be on terms we're all clear about." "Their terms," he meant. "Not mine." Driving home, I replayed the afternoon in my mind. The constant surveillance, the barely concealed disapproval of my gift, the way Rebecca had immediately packed away the train tracks rather than allowing James his moment of joy. Small cruelties disguised as responsible parenting. The following day, a Sunday, I attended church as usual. The familiar rituals and community had been a source of comfort since Thomas's passing. After the service, I joined several friends for coffee in the church hall, grateful for conversation that didn't revolve around family tensions or financial obligations. "Marion, have you met our new youth director?" Eleanor asked, gesturing toward a young woman chatting with the pastor across the room. "That's Heather Collins, Michael and Rebecca's neighbor. Such a lovely addition to our staff." I froze mid-sip. "Michael and Rebecca's neighbor? From Pine Meadow Estates?" "Yes, just 3 doors down, I believe. She mentioned knowing them when she introduced herself last month. Apparently, her little boy is friends with James." A connection I hadn't been aware of. I studied the young woman with new interest, tall, athletic, with short dark hair and an animated way of speaking. After finishing my coffee, I made my way over to introduce myself. "Heather? I'm Marion Hartwell, Michael's mother." her face lit with recognition. "Mrs. Hartwell, James talks about you constantly. It's wonderful to finally meet you." Her warmth seemed genuine, lacking the stilted politeness I'd grown accustomed to from Rebecca's friends. We chatted briefly about the church youth programs, then found ourselves discussing the neighborhood. "We love living so close to Michael and Rebecca," she shared. "Our son Max and James have become inseparable. They're constantly running between our houses." "That sounds lovely," I said, a pang of envy hitting me at this casual access to my grandson's daily life that I no longer enjoyed. "We actually had Max's birthday party last month. Dinosaur theme. The boys were thrilled. James stayed overnight afterward. It was their first sleepover." She smiled fondly at the memory. I maintained my expression with effort. A sleepover? James had never been allowed sleepovers before. Rebecca had insisted he was too young, that it would disrupt his sleep schedule too severely. That must have been exciting for them, I managed. "Oh, it was chaos." "In the best way," Heather laughed. "They were still running around well past 9 o'clock. Rebecca was so relaxed about it, said it was good for James to have these experiences." Each casual revelation landed like a small shock. Rebecca, relaxed about bedtime? The same Rebecca who had criticized me for keeping the children up 30 minutes past their scheduled bedtime when they stayed with me. "We're actually planning a little weekend trip to the lake house next month," Heather continued, oblivious to my internal turmoil. "Max is beyond excited that James and Lily will be joining us. 2 nights away, ambitious with preschoolers. But Rebecca says they're ready for a little adventure." I nodded automatically, my mind racing. 2 nights away from home? With another family? After I'd been restricted to supervised visits because I supposedly couldn't be trusted to maintain their routines? As Heather excused herself to attend to her duties, I remained rooted in place, processing this new information. The issue had never been about routines or rules or consistency. It had been about control, specifically, controlling my role in the children's lives while allowing others the very freedoms denied to me. That afternoon, I sat at my computer, staring at the quarterly statements for the college funds. Michael was right. It was time I'd normally have forwarded these to them. With a few clicks, I could send them along, maintain the fragile peace we'd established. Instead, I opened a new browser tab and navigated to my investment firm's website. The process of changing beneficiaries, which I'd researched but not implemented, was indeed straightforward. A few forms, a notary's signature, and I could redirect these funds to any purpose I chose. My finger hovered over the mouse. Was I really prepared to take this step? To use these funds as leverage in what was becoming an increasingly bitter family dispute? The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Through the peephole, I saw Michael standing on my porch, his expression tense. My pulse quickened as I opened the door. "Mom," he said without preamble, "we need to talk about the college funds." So this was it, the confrontation I'd been both dreading and anticipating. I stepped aside to let him enter, preparing myself for a difficult conversation. In the living room, Michael remained standing, declining my offer of tea or coffee. "I've been trying to reach you since yesterday," he said, his tone carefully controlled. "The quarterly statements, I haven't had a chance to forward them yet," I interrupted. "I've been preoccupied." "That's not why I'm here." He took a deep breath. "Mom, I know you've stopped making contributions to the accounts." So he'd discovered the change. I met his gaze steadily. "That's correct. May I ask why?" His voice was tight, as though restraining stronger emotions. "I think you know why, Michael. My financial situation has changed. I need to be more cautious with my resources." The partial truth came easily. "This is about the visitation restrictions, isn't it? You're punishing us financially because we set boundaries. Is that what you call it? Setting boundaries?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. Restricting your children's grandmother to supervised visits while allowing virtual strangers to take them for entire weekends? His brow furrowed. What? Are you talking about? I met Heather Collins today. She mentioned the upcoming lake house weekend with your family. 2 nights away from home with her family, after you told me James wasn't ready for sleepovers with his own grandmother. A flush crept up Michael's neck. That's different. How? How is it different, Michael? The questions came out sharper than intended. Heather also mentioned James's first sleepover after Max's birthday party. You told me, repeatedly, that disrupting his sleep schedule was harmful, that I couldn't be trusted to maintain his routine. Heather and Dan are parents. They understand, and I don't? I, who raised you, who maintained your routines and cared for you every day of your childhood. The hurt I'd been suppressing broke through my carefully maintained composure. What is this really about, Michael? Because it's clearly not about routines or sugar intake or bedtimes. He paced across my living room, running a hand through his hair in a gesture so reminiscent of Thomas that it momentarily distracted me from my anger. It's complicated, he said finally. Then explain it to me. Help me understand why the woman, who has loved your children since before they were born, is now treated like a threat, while casual friends are given the access I'm denied. Michael stopped pacing, his expression a complex mix of frustration and something like guilt. Rebecca feels. She feels you don't respect her as the children's mother, that you undermine her authority with them. By letting them have a cookie? By reading an extra bedtime story? The absurdity of it struck me anew. It's not about specific incidents, it's a pattern. The way you... He hesitated. The way you've always made her feel judged. Less than. This accusation caught me off guard. I've never judged Rebecca, never said a word against her to the children. Not directly, no. But Mom, the comments about how you did things differently when I was growing up. The little suggestions about how she might handle situations better. The way you swoop in when the kids are upset, as if she's failed them somehow. I opened my mouth to protest, then closed it again, reviewing our interactions through this new lens. Had I been subtly critical without realizing it? Had my desire to help been perceived as judgment? That was never my intention, I said finally, my voice softer. If I've made Rebecca feel that way, I'm truly sorry for it. Michael's shoulders relaxed slightly at this concession. It's been building for years. The restrictions weren't about punishing you. They were about Rebecca finally finding her voice, setting limits she's felt unable to establish before. By cutting the children off from me? By treating me like an untrustworthy stranger? Despite my attempt at understanding, the hurt remained raw. And now you're upset because I've stopped financial contributions you've always taken for granted. This isn't about the money, he insisted. Isn't it? You noticed the missing statement before you noticed your mother's broken heart. The words came out before I could stop them, laying bare the painful truth I'd been avoiding. Michael flinched, as though I'd struck him physically. For a long moment, silence filled the room, heavy with decades of unspoken hurts and expectations. I should go, he said finally, moving toward the door. We'll talk about this another time. I didn't try to stop him. As the door closed behind him, I sank onto the sofa, emotionally drained by the confrontation. The revelation about Rebecca's feelings had shifted something in my understanding, complicating what had seemed a clear case of unfair treatment. Yet the double standard remained. Casual friends trusted with overnight care, while I was relegated to supervised visits. My gaze fell on the college fund statement still open on my laptop screen. With new clarity, I realized I stood at a crossroads. One path leading toward potential reconciliation through compromise, the other toward asserting my financial autonomy regardless of the relationship cost. The choice I made now would ripple through our family for years to come. The week following Michael's visit passed in a haze of emotional exhaustion. I went through the motions of my daily activities, but my mind remained fixated on our confrontation and its revelations. Rebecca felt judged by me. Had I been critical without realizing it? Had my suggestions, offered with good intentions, come across as implicit criticism of her parenting? The possibility troubled me deeply. Thursday morning found me at the cemetery where Thomas was buried. I hadn't planned the visit. My feet simply carried me there during what had begun as a routine walk. I settled onto the small bench near his headstone, where I'd spent many hours after his death. "I could use your wisdom right about now," I said aloud. "You always knew how to navigate family conflicts without anyone feeling diminished." A gentle breeze stirred the purple coneflowers I'd planted around the headstone. In that quiet moment, I could almost hear Thomas's practical voice. "Marion, pride makes poor company when you're missing the people you love." Pride. Was that what this was about? My wounded pride battling against Rebecca's insecurities? That afternoon, I called Catherine. "I've been thinking about what you said about creating a scorecard in this conflict with Michael and Rebecca." "And?" Her voice held no judgment, only patient interest. "You were right. I've been keeping a tally of offenses. It hasn't helped anything." I sighed. "Michael came by last weekend. He said Rebecca feels judged by me, that I undermine her as a mother. Do you think there's truth to that? I never intended to make her feel that way. But intention and impact aren't always aligned, are they? I may have been insensitive to how my suggestions came across." "What are you going to do about the college funds?" Catherine asked. "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to use them as leverage. Another part recognizes that would only deepen the rift." "I'd separate the issues," she said after a thoughtful pause. "The college funds were established for Lily and James, not as a bargaining chip. Your relationship with Michael and Rebecca needs to be addressed directly, not through financial maneuvering." Her words resonated with something Thomas might have said. Practical, principled, focused on the long view rather than immediate satisfaction. After our call, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad, attempting to organize my thoughts. What did I truly want? What was I willing to compromise on? What boundaries remained non-negotiable? By evening, I had distilled my thoughts to their essence. I wanted regular, unsupervised time with my grandchildren, recognition of my role, and mutual respect. I was willing to be more mindful of how my suggestions might be perceived, communicate more openly, and respect certain parenting decisions even when I disagreed. My non-negotiables included being treated as trustworthy, maintaining some financial autonomy regarding the college funds, and preserving my dignity. With this clarity, I drafted an email to Michael and Rebecca, requesting a meeting to discuss our situation with open hearts and clear minds. I suggested meeting at a neutral location and emphasized my desire to find a resolution that honored everyone's needs, especially those of Lily and James. The response came the following morning, from Rebecca, not Michael. They agreed to meet, but at their home after the children were in bed. Not ideal, but I recognized the olive branch extended in their willingness to meet at all. I accepted, preparing myself for what might be the most important conversation of our fractured relationship. "I think we start with clear expectations," Michael said, looking between Rebecca and me. "Things we all agree to honor, even when it's challenging." Rebecca nodded. "I don't want the children to lose their relationship with you. They adore you, and that connection is important." She hesitated. "But I need to know my parenting decisions will be respected." "That's fair," I acknowledged. "I can be more mindful of deferring to your rules, even when my grandmother instincts suggest otherwise." I smiled slightly. "Though I hope there's still room for the occasional indulgence. That is part of a grandmother's job description." A fleeting smile crossed Rebecca's face, the first genuine one I'd seen directed at me in months. "I suppose some flexibility could be built in. Special occasions, perhaps, We spent the next hour outlining a framework for moving forward. Regular, weekly visits that would transition back to unsupervised time as our new understanding solidified, clearer communication about parenting preferences, and a commitment to addressing concerns directly rather than allowing resentments to fester. And the college funds? Michael asked finally, the question I'd been expecting all evening. I met his gaze steadily. The existing money remains designated for Lily and James's education. That was always my intention, regardless of our disagreements. I paused, gathering my thoughts. As for future contributions, I'd like to adjust the amount and frequency to better balance my current financial needs with my desire to support their future. Michael's expression revealed disappointment, but he nodded. That's your decision. To make, Mom. I can't pretend I'm not concerned about the impact on their educational opportunities, but I understand your position. Perhaps we could revisit the conversation in 6 months, Rebecca suggested, surprising me again with her reasonableness. See how our new arrangement is working for everyone. As I drove home that night, streetlights casting rhythmic patterns, through my windshield, I felt a weight lifting that I hadn't fully acknowledged until its absence. The conversation hadn't resolved everything. Deep-seated patterns of interaction wouldn't change overnight, but it had opened a path forward, based on mutual understanding rather than hurt and defensiveness. The next morning, I woke with unusual clarity about my next steps. After breakfast, I called my financial advisor, Stephanie, and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. In her office, surrounded by charts and investment prospectuses, I outlined my revised approach to the grandchildren's college funds. I'd like to reduce my monthly contributions from $500 per child to $200, I explained. The existing funds should remain allocated as they are, but I need to redirect some of those resources toward my own financial security. Stephanie nodded, making notes. That's entirely reasonable, Marion. Many grandparents find they need to balance generosity toward grandchildren with their own retirement needs. Have you thought about what you'd like to do with the difference? Yes. Actually, I pulled out a small notepad where I'd jotted down some preliminary calculations. I'd like to establish a personal travel fund, nothing extravagant, but enough to take a few trips I've been postponing for years. The Grand Canyon? She asked with a smile, remembering our previous conversation. That's at the top of the list. Thomas and I always talked about seeing it together. I think it's time I go, even if he can't be with me in person. As Stephanie adjusted my financial plan, creating the new travel fund alongside the reduced college contributions, I felt a surge of something I hadn't experienced in months. Excitement for my own future. Not excitement tied to my role as grandmother or mother, but as Marion Hartwell, a woman with her own dreams and aspirations. There's one more thing, I said as she prepared the paperwork for my signature. I'd like to establish a new account, a small one with monthly transfers of $100. Call it a Grandparent Experiences Fund. Stephanie looked up, curious. What's that for? Day trips with Lily and James. Museum visits, special outings maybe. Eventually a weekend adventure when they're older and Rebecca feels more comfortable with it. I smiled at the thought. I want to create memories with them, not just fund their distant education. Both matter, but I've been focusing too exclusively on the future at the expense of the present. Later that week, a text message from Michael appeared on my phone. Wednesday pickup from school still works for regular visits. Lily has ballet at 5, but James is free all afternoon. Let us know if that timing works for you. A simple message, mundane in its practicality, yet it represented something profound. The restoration of regular, unsupervised time with my grandchildren. Not exactly what we'd had before, but perhaps something more sustainable, built on clearer understanding. Texted back immediately. Wednesday afternoons are perfect. Looking forward to it. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh legal pad, but this time I wasn't listing grievances or strategies for confrontation. Instead, I began planning activities for my Wednesday afternoons with James. a visit to the Children's Science Museum he'd been curious about, baking his favorite cookies, with Rebecca's advance approval, perhaps starting a simple gardening project in a corner of my backyard. For the first time in months, I fell asleep looking forward to the future rather than dwelling on hurts from the past. I had reclaimed not just time with my grandchildren, but something equally valuable, my sense of agency in creating a life that honored all facets of who I was: grandmother, mother, widow, and woman with dreams of her own still waiting to be fulfilled. The Grand Canyon wouldn't have to wait much longer. Neither would James and his train tracks, or Lily and her ballet recitals. There was room in my heart, and now in my schedule and financial plan, for all of it. The first Wednesday afternoon with James unfolded with the sweet ordinariness I had desperately missed. I waited outside his preschool, heart quickening, when I spotted him in the dismissal line, his Batman backpack nearly as large as his small frame. His face lit up when he saw me, and he ran the last few steps, colliding with my legs in an enthusiastic hug. "Grandma, we're having special time today. The teacher smiled as she checked me off on her approved pickup list. "He's been talking about this all morning. Have fun, you two." In the car, James chattered nonstop about his day, the frog they'd observed in the classroom terrarium, the block tower he'd built all the way to the ceiling, surely an exaggeration, and the letter M they were learning, which was special because it was like in Mom and Marion and Michael. At home, we made peanut butter cookies, pre-approved by Rebecca, built elaborate train track configurations with both his existing set and the new tracks I'd given him, and read 3 books about dinosaurs. The afternoon passed in a blur of small, precious moments: James's concentrated expression as he carefully measured flour, his infectious giggle when the train derailed on a curve, his warm weight against my side as we read together. When Michael arrived to pick him up at 5:30, James was reluctant to leave. "5 more minutes, Dad? Please? We just got to the best part about the T-Rex." Michael smiled, a genuine, relaxed expression I hadn't seen in months. "We need to get home for dinner, buddy, but you'll see Grandma next Wednesday, right? And maybe Lily can come too next time, when she doesn't have ballet?" James looked at me hopefully. "That would be wonderful," I said, glancing at Michael for confirmation. "We'll work it out," he promised, helping James gather his belongings. "Thanks, Mom." He clearly had a great time. After they left, I moved through my quiet house with a lightness I hadn't felt in ages. The afternoon had been everything I'd hoped for: simple, joyful, unmarked by the tension that had shadowed our family for months. But maintaining this new equilibrium proved more challenging than I'd anticipated. The following Sunday, Rebecca called with an abrupt change of plans. "Marion, I'm sorry to do this last minute, but we need to cancel Wednesday's visit. James has a doctor's appointment I couldn't reschedule." Disappointment washed over me. "I understand. Could we move it to Thursday instead?" "That won't work. Lily has a school event and Michael has a late meeting." Her tone was polite but firm. "We'll just have to skip this week." I swallowed my frustration. "Of course. Please let James know I'll miss seeing him, but we'll have extra fun next week." After hanging up, I fought against the suspicion that this was a test, a deliberate cancellation to see how I would react. Had our reconciliation been too easy? Was Rebecca still harboring doubts about my ability to respect their authority? The canceled visit was followed by other small incidents that tested my commitment to our new understanding. Rebecca forgetting to include me in an email about Lily's upcoming school performance, Michael suggesting that perhaps bi-weekly visits would be more manageable than weekly ones, a last-minute invitation to James's t-ball game that arrived too late for me to rearrange my volunteer commitment at the library. Each time, I responded with measured patience, refusing to interpret these incidents as deliberate slights even when they felt that way. I had made a decision to prioritize my relationship with my grandchildren over pride or past grievances, and that meant absorbing some disappointments without retaliation or complaint. 3 months into our new arrangement, the pattern had stabilized into something I could live with, if not entirely embrace. Wednesday afternoons with James had become a treasured ritual, occasionally expanded to include Lily when her ballet schedule permitted. There had been more last-minute cancellations than I would have liked, but also unexpected invitations. Sunday afternoon at the park, a Saturday morning soccer game where Lily proudly scored her first goal. The college funds remained adjusted to my new contribution level, the difference now divided between my travel fund and the grandparent experiences account I had established. The latter had already financed a memorable trip to the Children's Science Museum with James and a special grandmother-granddaughter, lunch with Lily at a cafe that served fancy tea in real china cups. But something was still missing, a deeper resolution that went beyond polite accommodation of each other's needs. Despite our civil interactions, there remained an undercurrent of caution in my relationship with Rebecca, a careful distance neither of us quite knew how to bridge. That changed unexpectedly on a warm June evening. I had just returned from my water aerobics class when my phone rang. Rebecca's name appeared on the screen, unusual for this time of day. Marion? Her voice sounded strained. I hate to ask this, but I'm in a terrible bind. Michael's stuck at a work conference in Denver. My parents are on a cruise and I've just been called to the hospital. My father had a heart attack while traveling. They've airlifted him to a cardiac center in Seattle. Oh, Rebecca, I'm so sorry, I said, genuinely concerned. Is there anything I can do? That's why I'm calling. I need to fly out tonight. The last flight leaves in 3 hours. Could you possibly stay with the children? It might be several days. I know it's a lot to ask. The request hung between us, its significance extending far beyond the practical need for childcare. This was Rebecca asking me to step in during a family crisis, trusting me, without supervision, with her children for an indefinite period. Of course I'll stay with them, I said without hesitation. Don't worry about a thing here. Just focus on your father. Relief flooded her voice. Thank you. I can't tell you what this means to me. I'll text you the flight information once I'm booked. Could you come over in about an hour? That would give me time to pack and explain things to the children. I'll be there, I promised, already mentally listing what I would need to bring for an extended stay. An hour later, I arrived at their house with an overnight bag and a calm demeanor I didn't entirely feel. The responsibility being placed on me was significant, not just caring for the children's physical needs, but supporting them emotionally through their mother's absence and their grandfather's health crisis. Rebecca met me at the door, her face drawn with worry. Thank you for coming so quickly. The kids are in the living room. I've told them I need to go help Grandpa Harold, but I haven't gone into details about the heart attack. I thought it best to keep it simple for now. I nodded. That seems wise. How are they taking it? Lily understands more. She's concerned, but handling it well. James is mostly confused about why I have to leave at night. She led me into the kitchen, where she'd left a detailed list of instructions, meal preferences, bedtime routines, emergency contacts, and the children's schedules for the coming days. I know this is overwhelming, she said, gesturing at the extensive notes. But I thought it would be helpful to have everything written down. I recognized the document for what it was, not just practical information, but a mother's attempt to maintain some control in a situation where she was forced to relinquish it. This is perfect, Rebecca. It will help me keep their routines as normal as possible. She met my eyes then, vulnerability evident in her expression. I know we've had our differences, but there's no one else I'd trust more with them right now. You love them the way I do. The simple acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes. Yes, I do. And I promise to take the very best care of them until you're back. In that moment, something shifted between us. An understanding reached not through careful negotiation or legal mediation, but through the shared priority of loving the same children. As Rebecca hurried to finish her preparations, I went to sit with Lily and James, beginning what would become the most transformative week of our family's recent history. The 5 days Rebecca spent in Seattle with her father transformed our family dynamics in ways I couldn't have anticipated. Caring for Lily and James full-time, managing school drop-offs and pickups, helping with homework, soothing nighttime fears about their grandfather's health, created a new foundation of trust between us all. I was careful to follow Rebecca's detailed instructions, maintaining the children's routines while finding small ways to make the difficult situation easier for them. When James couldn't sleep, worried about his mother's absence, I taught him the same breathing technique I'd once used with Michael during childhood thunderstorms. For Lily, who processed her concerns more verbally, I created a feelings journal where she could draw or write about her emotions each day. Each evening, we video called Rebecca for updates. Harold was stable after emergency surgery, beginning what would be a long recovery. During these calls, I made sure to step away after the initial greetings, giving the children private time with their mother while I busied myself in the kitchen or laundry room. This small gesture of respect for their relationship didn't go unnoticed by Rebecca. "You've been amazing," she told me during a late-night call after the children were asleep. "Michael says the house is running more smoothly than when we're both there." She laughed softly, the sound tinged with exhaustion. "I'm not sure if that's a compliment to you or an indictment of our parenting." "You're wonderful parents," I assured her. "The children are thriving because you've given them such a strong foundation. I'm just maintaining what you've built." On the 6th day, Rebecca returned home, bringing news of her father's continued recovery and tentative plans for his rehabilitation. The children greeted her with exuberant hugs and a homemade welcome back banner we'd created that morning, before school. As I prepared to return to my own house, Rebecca pulled me aside. "Marian, we need to talk about the college funds." My heart sank. After all the progress we'd made, was this still going to be a point of contention? "Michael and I have been discussing it," she continued. "We think your adjustment makes sense. In fact, we've decided to start matching your contributions, $200 monthly for each child from us as well. It seems fair that we share this responsibility." The unexpected turn caught me off guard. "That's very generous of you," she smiled, the expression warmer than any she'd directed toward me in years. "It's not generosity, it's partnership. This past week has reminded me what family really means. Not perfect agreement on everything, but showing up for each other when it matters most." 3 weeks later, I found myself boarding a tour bus at the Grand Canyon National Park Visitor Center, my heart racing with anticipation. The trip, financed through my newly established travel fund, felt like both an ending and a beginning. As the bus wound along the South Rim, revealing increasingly spectacular views, I opened the small locket that had once held photos of my grandchildren. Inside, now was a third tiny image, Thomas at this very spot, taken during our honeymoon 45 years earlier. His smile seemed to say, "You made it, Marian. Finally." That evening, I sent a group text to Michael, Rebecca, and Catherine. "Grand Canyon, even more magnificent than imagined. Wish you could see these colors. Next trip, bringing Lily and James. When they're older, some wonders need to be shared across generations." Rebecca's response came first. "They can't wait. James is already asking when he's old enough for Grandma's big adventure." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.